Good evening, friends. This is Bob Gums bringing you the Concern Forum. I hope everyone's having a good evening. Let me read a little something here. Someone once said, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. And I think that that statement is quite apropos uh, to America, to the United States, especially over the last few years. Oh, by the way, that was I'm not the one that wrote that. That was a guy named Thomas Jefferson. Uh, he had he had his issues, obviously, but I think in terms of government, I think he was pretty much on the mark. Listen, I'm doing this video tonight because, quite frankly, I'm a little bit tired of hearing this whole unfortunate business of Charlie Kirk, and I see this man being turned into some type of icon, and I don't think that it's deserved, quite frankly. I'm just tired of the theatrics. I'm tired of people, both on mainstream media and on the internet, uh, especially those who call themselves liberal, moderate, even some Black American commentators, people like Steve Smith and his ilk, his ilk. Uh, Look, right now, Charlie Kirk is meeting with his creator, okay? And I'm just wondering, with all this hoopla behind this, man, we have thousands of deaths of, people in this country every year because of gun violence. America, the United States, contributes to thousands of deaths in Gaza. Okay. Um, I'm not doing any fake mourning. Okay. I believe, as a Black American, that it's neither necessary for me to celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk or really to mourn him and what he stood for. Um, Quite frankly, I think it's an unfortunate thing that I think he's more useful now to the right wing, to MAGA, to the people that want to destroy this country. I think his death is of more value to them uh, than he was when he was alive, to be honest about it. He was, the way I see it, Charlie was just a vessel, okay? And not just a vessel, but he was a product of this sick American society that we have. And both Charlie and the kid that murdered him, they're products of the same sick society, frankly. But now we have people who want to turn Charlie Kirk into some kind of icon. From what I understand, we have right-wing MAGA people that want to, run around and threaten people, want to supposedly kill leftists, kill Democrats, kill progressives. Well, I'll tell you quite frankly. Again, speaking as a Black American, we survived the Middle Passage. We survived chattel slavery. We survived Jim Crow. We survived the lynch mobs and the burning of our communities in little towns. So, hey, if that is as far as your intellect will take you, so be it. Now, I also want to say something uh, closely akin to this subject. Who the hell does Laura Loomer think she is? It popped up on my computer a short time ago. Who is she to desecrate our hard won, our hard fought for Constitution? Who is she to try to restrict the rights of other Americans because she doesn't happen to agree with them? That annoys me. I find it so ironic that these right wing people who talk about, hey, you're censoring me, but they're always the first ones to try and restrict what other people can say. And yet you claim that Kirk was an icon for free speech. Very confusing. Plus, looking at the fact that no one voted for Laura Loomer, so I hear she has the president's ear. You know, you take that for what it's worth. Now, it just seems that this right wing, this whole MAGA thing, is about trying to bend America to their will. Gee, that's kind of a unique definition of a patriot, right? You want to try to bend other people to your will. And, the noisiest voices, okay? Well, Charlie Kirk was one. He heads the list. This kid that was rejected from West Point, I don't know why. I know that he applied and he was rejected. That Adolf Hitler applied for the fancy art and architecture school in Vienna, Austria, and he was rejected. So you figure that one out for yourself. We got Stephen Miller. We got Jesse Waters. We have Greg Gutfield. We have Brian Kilmeade. Now, we don't believe in censorship in America, at least we're not supposed to. But I'd like to know why nobody is starting a movement. Now I see we're running around, we're getting people fired, we're forcing people to go on leave because they had something negative to say about Mr. Kirk. But I don't understand, why is it okay for Jesse Waters to get on the public airways and say that he wants to declare war on American citizens that don't believe as he believes. And I don't understand why that should be tolerated. And I said the same thing. Oh, and Brian Kilmeade. And we're talking about Fox, naturally. Brian Kilmeade. This guy says that we should take all the homeless people and inject them, kill them, euthanasia. Uh, that's been done, right? That was done in the 30s by the Nazis. So is this what we have sunk to? Now, we're going to get a little tricky here because we talk about freedom of speech, but you have a show on television, right, in the community, and there used to be such a thing as community standards, right? I mean, I could not have a show on the network at 7 o'clock in the evening featuring raw pornography. right? Trump talks about the FCC taking licenses away. I think that a media host that declares war on his fellow citizens because they don't agree with him, or a media host that says he wants to kill homeless people, I somehow don't believe that that fits into the correct purview of New York City standards. And I'll be honest about it, I've been speaking to people quite some time saying that we need to get Fox out of New York. And I do believe that these are some damn good reasons. Also, I will also point out to Mr. Kilmeade, you know about, what is it, something like about half of the homeless people in America are veterans. Okay? So, this is what I mean with these guys, right? Uh, Charlie Kirk, Stephen Miller, Jesse Waters, Ray Gutfeld, Brian Kilmeade. What do they have in common? They never served a damn day in service to this country. And it's funny because they have the biggest mouths about who doesn't belong here, who does belong here, who's a patriot, who's not a patriot. And I tell you, quite frankly, I guess I'm by myself, but I'm sick of these guys. I really am. I think they're phony. The only one that's real is the guy that Trump recently pardoned, was Steve Bannon. He was a naval officer. God knows what happened to him. Okay. But, I give him respect for having actually wore the uniform and serving the country. But I find that the most insufferable little creeps who never served a day in their life have the biggest mouths, you know, especially Kilby and Waters, these couple of pansies. They want to kill people because they're homeless, right? They want to go to war against people because they don't agree with their political views, right? I mean, come on. And this is the vanguard of this MAGA American right. See, and frankly, I think they're disgusting. Now, let me see, because I jotted down a couple of things here. The the whole thing with this gentleman Charlie Kirk. Well, let me put it to you like this. Just because I say that the murder of Charlie Kirk was wrong, doesn't mean that I have to eulogize this guy as some kind of martyr of the free speech. We don't have to do that in this country, number one. And this whole business about a medal, or excuse me, yeah, a medal of freedom. And then, again, here we go. The pansies that didn't serve, right, or ran away, like Donald Trump, remember, five-time draft dodger, right? Uh, he wants to give the Medal of Freedom to a guy that was very hateful and vile towards Black and Latino veterans. Now, he definitely, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't deserve to have the American flag that people of all colors and genders gave their blood for. Why? Because he was an elegant bigot? We have really come down a lot in this country. I got a question. What about that fellow officer who happened to be Black at the CDC that was killed by that right wing Trump supporter? What's his name? David Rose. I didn't hear or see anyone talk about a flag at half mast for him. Or how about that lady, Melissa Horton, right? Speaker of the State House in Minnesota. Her and her husband were murdered by a Trump supporter. But yet, she didn't get a flag at half mast. Well, what is this? And how dare the DOD, Department of Defense, tell military people that they can't speak ill of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was not a government official. He was not an elected official. And if you, in the military, feel that you want to express your opinion, DOD doesn't have the right to say that you can't. I think that the best phrase that I would use towards this whole Trump cabal is, who the hell do you people think you are? This is America. This is not Nazi Germany. Although you give the impression that that's what you're trying to turn us into, say. And I think, I'm looking, where are the Democrats? Where are the progressives? Where is the NAACP to stand up and speak out against this type of madness? Well, what's that? Evil triumphs where good men do nothing, right? I think all the groups that I just mentioned, I think that they need to maybe reacquaint themselves with that phrase. Now, I will tell you that there has been a failure. There's been a failure of the left, of the Democratic Party, of progressive organizations like the NAACP. And they have left a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. And unfortunately, that vacuum has been filled by basically tools of a certain part of corporate America that want the American people to tear at each other instead of dealing with our basic problems. And that's how Charlie Kirk rose to prominence. Now, this guy Kirk was a vicious tool. And he was sponsored, as I said, by the people who wish to keep our nation divided. If Charlie really cared about working people in America, he would ask why. Why do farmers, particularly white farmers in the heartland, why are they committing suicide at record rates? Right? Why are, folks, right, in the rural areas of America, and actually all over America, losing their jobs like crazy? Why did the president decide to strip health care from 17 million Americans? Why? What happened to those white Republican voters in rural America that are seeing their hospitals close and their nursing homes closed? Why didn't Charlie talk about that? No? Charlie's answer to everything was, well, let's blame the blacks. Let's blame DEA. Let's blame Latino immigrants. Let's blame women. Okay, let's blame it on trans people. Now, how in the hell, trans people, Jesus Christ, they must have a secret cabal or something, because they're hardly 1% of the population. But MAGA and the right have turned them into some kind of colossus, so that everything negative in this country is their fault. Does that make sense to you? And the same thing with LGBT people, and of course Muslims. Oh no, we can't forget Muslims. Oh, And see, that's the fallacy of turning Kirk into some kind of icon. Because his answer that all the ills in America is hate, right? Whatever, not love thy neighbor, but hate thy neighbor. And I mean, somebody sent something to the internet about him standing next to Jesus. I would be really curious what Jesus is saying to him right now, quite frankly. Now, you gotta ask yourself, right? The what the hell has happened to us? Um, this splurge of hate, especially on young people, college campuses, right? These lines. And I imagine myself if I was back on active duty, how would I feel facing the flag that's at half mast and seeing this person get a Medal of Freedom, this very same person that said that I'm not qualified to serve in the military. And if I was a black woman, what did he say about black women? Oh, their brains are smaller and less intelligent than white men. Hmm. And this is what you want. This is what you expect America. We're supposed to walk around on eggshells. No, I can't do that. I won't do that. Now, no one deserves to be murdered. Mhm. And it's funny, because in spite of everything, in spite of being an American black man, born and raised here, and knowing the history of this country and the history of black Americans in this country, it's funny. I still have empathy. I understand that Charlie left two kids without a father, right? And if you notice, I don't say, well, he left a wife and family. I just say, you know, I have empathy about the situation for his two children, two kids, right? Uh, why? Two kids didn't choose to be, they didn't choose to be born. Okay, number one. Number two, his wife, that was her choice. She chose to be with someone with the views that Charlie Kirk had, and that is her right. But my empathy stops at the fatherless children. Now, Charlie said himself, violent deaths in America are the price that we pay to have the freedom of our Second Amendment. So I guess it's a case of, you know, be careful what you ask for. I mean, I hope that Charlie thinks the price was worth it. I really do. And like I say, I do have empathy for his little ones. As a matter of fact, I have a great deal of empathy. I have empathy for his I don't know if mom and dad are still around, but yeah, I can dig it. I can feel it. I have empathy. America so far, as I get older, I surprise myself that I still do have empathy after living in American society for all these decades. But I don't. I'm not trying to be facetious about that. I don't need anyone to tell me about how horrendous gun violence is. Um, People being murdered by gun violence. I lost my firstborn son to gun violence. So I understand how it feels. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I know how you feel, which is bullshit. Because unless you've gone through it, no, you don't know. Okay, and I have that. Like I say, I have that for the kids. Now, although I grieve for the children, I'm not going to bow down to the president or the MAGA right wing. I'm not going to bow down to the pedestal that they want to put Charlie Kirk on. The pedestal that he was some kind of model for free speech. And there's this red state senator, what's his name? Langford, Senator Langford. And he was saying something about the fact that, we're not supposed to, stop believing that, because someone thinks differently, uh, other than those around them, that should never be illegal. And I quite agree with that, Senator Langford. I really do. But expecting our nation, which supposedly is supposed to be about the respect and dignity and humanity of all men and women, uh, I can't hold that belief. And at the same time, weep for a man like Charlie Kirk, whose very career was predicated on the proposition that if you didn't look like him and worship like him, then somehow you were mentally deficient and unworthy to take part in the full cornucopia of American life. And it seems like now the right wing and this president seem willing to use the power of the state to compel us to mourn this guy. Um, I can't see that. I can't see that. I can't see him as some kind of sainted American icon. I won't do that. Now, I know that, it's probably going to cost me. I know I'm going to catch hell for this, but I won't do that. Too many good, decent Americans, women, men of all colors, religions, ethnicities, have spent the last 250 years fighting for the idea that out of many come one. See? So for me to play along with those folks in the media, both mainstream and on the internet, especially my brothers and sisters on the left, like what's his name? Stephen, Stiff brother's name. He was on, used to be on, I believe it's Stephen Smith, because he said something that I was really taken aback by. I caught it on the internet. But I'm not going, I'm not going to do that. And I'm sorry. To say, oh, well, it was a tragedy, blah, blah, blah. But, he spoke his mind. He was about freedom of speech. Well, I'm sorry. Like I say, I don't see him as being a symbol of American values. America is supposed to be a place where people can participate in their government, worship or not worship as they choose, and live their life in accordance with their beliefs without harming their neighbors. Period. Now, myself, as a descendant of slaves, I understand. My mom said that family lore has it we've been in America, out of Virginia, since this sometime in the 1680s, and we provided the basis of what became America. Because yes, America was essentially built upon slavery, and it wasn't just the South; it was the North. Right? It's called economics. It's called money. See, and I think about all those black men that fought and died at Fort Wagner, right? For that flag. You know, it's funny because you have these right wing clowns now in government. Let's make flag burning illegal, right? Which is unconstitutional. I think it was a Judge Alito even said that. But in all my time demonstrating and fighting for freedom in this country, I never thought about burning the flag. I couldn't. I couldn't because I knew about Fort Wagner long when I was a little kid. See, I had people that taught me about the history of my people in this country and about those brave black men that literally died before they would let that flag touch the ground. And I guess that's the reason I could never do it, no matter how upset during the Vietnam period, during the civil rights period. I could never burn the flag. I couldn't. And I find it funny that you, the people who represent the government now, want us to practically worship a guy that said that these men that charged up Fort Wagner were inferior, are inferior. You know, I just I can't see that. Listen, I would say that Charlie Kirk is getting his greatest lesson, his greatest life lesson, because the greatest lesson that you can get in life is your death. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not, I was a Roman Catholic altar boy, St. Thomas the Apostle in Harlem, okay? But now I know I'm not religious, okay? I do believe in some of the basic tenets of Christianity, but I'm not a religious person. But I do believe in the Creator, and I do believe that somehow, some way, when the show is over, we will be held accountable for the things that we did and said in life. And in my opinion, that is the greatest lesson. Okay? The greatest lesson is the last lesson. I hope Charlie Kirk, well, put it this way, I hope that he will have, that he will get his last greatest lesson. And we all will have to face that sooner or later. And I do believe, though, I do believe I will never be like many of these so-called evangelical Christians that we have here in America. I am not so presumptuous as to say what the Creator will or will not do. But I do believe that Charlie's greatest lesson, his final lesson, will be that all of us, men, women, black, white, yellow, red, brown, that we are all children of the Creator. I think that for all the so-called religious hoopla that we have in this country, and which has been used shamelessly by the Republican Party of MAGA, I think that that is something that we have forgotten here in America. Say, frankly, I have known quite a few atheists who show much more Christian empathy than most of the evangelical Christians that we have running around in this country right now. Uh, I don't believe, and I'm just speaking from my background, my experience. I don't believe that a true uh, a true Christian would be happy seeing children taken away from their parents, wives taken away from their husbands because of paperwork. That's basically all it is. We have allowed the President of the United States to turn ICE into his own personal Gestapo. And as Americans, I think that we really need to be ashamed of ourselves. And we need to ask ourselves, what type of people are we? What kind of society are we that can produce someone like a Charlie Kirk who could go on college campuses and tell college students that, hey, your lot in life sucks because black women with small brains are taking college spots away from you and taking jobs away from you. Your lot in life sucks because people from south of the border somehow taking away your jobs, most of which most Americans don't want to do anyway. And I understand that there's some question about on the internet, we're saying that, oh well, Charlie Kirk was turning against Israel. You know, this madness, man, it is sometimes it can be so overwhelming. We have a president that wants to attack universities for supposedly anti-Semitism, and any damn fool that born and raised in America and knows anything about American politics knows that your greatest anti-Semites are in MAGA, the right wing. And it's funny because originally, until this Gaza thing really came on the world stage, we have a situation in this country where the right wing hates American Jews, but they're fully in support of Israel killing Palestinians. Now, that's changing. Thank God that's changing because what's happening in Gaza is genocide. I mean, the whole world sees that. But I tell you, I am sick and tired of seeing my fellow citizens basically being used as tools, as tools. America's got a lot of big problems, okay? And too often, and that's the problem with the right wing, uh, especially nowadays. Instead of dealing with the problems, they would rather throw hate. Um, I think that the problem with America, we're not going to get it straight. United States, we are not ever going to get this country straight until we actually grasp and deal with ourselves, who we are, our history, how things came to be like this. See, I got this kooky notion. Country's just like a man. Man, what's a man? What's a person? Some good, some bad. You do good things, and sometimes you make some pretty big bonehead mistakes. But you have to realize that. You have to come to grips with that. It's just like a wound. You could have a bad wound. It has to be cleansed, right? And that's the same thing with America. And it's not about just dumping on Charlie Kirk and MAGA, whatever. It's not just dumping on them because they're just symptoms of the problems that we have here in the United States. You talk about crime, right? I understand that the last words out of Kirk's mouth was gang violence or something to that effect. This whole thing, for example, about black on black crime, right? But nobody bothers to say anything about white on white crime. Wouldn't it be better if we just dealt with the causes of crime, period? You have a vice president. He wrote a book talking about rural crime. Right? Or have we forgotten about that? You know? Um, the biggest cause of crime is poverty, not race, not ethnicity, but poverty. Okay. Charlie Kirk liked to really dump all over the war on poverty. Right. Everyone forgets. I say well, war on poverty, and you see, a black or Latino face pop up. This is an example, and a lot of the mainstream media is responsible for these mistaken views. The war on poverty was never started for African Americans or Latino. The whole idea came about when Jack Kennedy was running for president. And he saw the conditions of white working class people in West Virginia. Okay. After he was assassinated, LBJ, he picked up the mantle. What was he visiting? The cabin of, I think, the father. There were like 7 kids. The man had 7 kids and his wife. And if I'm not mistaken, he was dying of black lung disease. And LBJ talked to one of the little boys there. And that's what inspired him because he came off of his own version of the war on poverty. See, so the idea that Charlie Kirk and people like him tried to spread was the idea that, oh, well, all this war on poverty crap was about, black people in the ghetto and all. No, no, we benefited. Not as much as as people have been led to believe. We did benefit, but not, you know, uh, I would say not to a greater amount. I mean, just like affirmative action. Who benefited from the most from affirmative action? White women, which is cool. I mean, that's great because God knows all the crap they've been through over the last 150 years. They deserve it. But see, I'm just trying to point out how things get twisted. See, because of people like Charlie Kirk, like Rush Limbaugh, uh, these MAGA senators and Congress people that you have in government now. And, it really angers me because you look at primarily white rural America, and these people live bad, and they are angry and bitter, and I don't blame them. But see, what I resent about the right wing is that they take that resentment and instead of helping the people in rural America, they basically, well, it's because of them LGBT people, and the Democrats just care about blacks and Latinos and trans people. And a lot of times these rural people, they don't even have, cable. They're stuck with one source of information, like Fox, right? And so they're basically like in the last, I don't know how many years, they're basically brought up to be a fertile environment for hate. Now, as I said before, Democrats, progressives, liberal organizations like the NAACP, yeah, they're not blameless because they could be doing a whole hell of a lot more to go out amongst the people, right? Not just in the cities, but out there in rural America. And just talk to them and tell them the truth that so called minorities are not the ones responsible for their bad lot in life. See? And that's where we on the left, that's where we have dropped the ball. That's where we have helped to stimulate people like Charlie Kirk. Because if people are desperate for solutions and there's no water, sometimes they'll drink sand. And that's what's happened in this country. Okay? Um, the idea, like in New York, you got Mondami running for mayor. And you have these right wing people and a lot of these backwards ass Democrats. Well, I'm scared to come out and publicly support him, or I'm scared of his socialist leanings and all this kind of crap. But I would say to them, where the hell were you when people were losing their apartments, losing their homes because of the skyrocketing prices? And I know we're talking about New York City, and every place is unique unto itself, but damn, the cost of living, it's nationwide. Now, I understand you have some Democrats now who are really doing the right thing, but I'm just trying to make a thumbnail sketch of how we have gotten in this mess in the first place, how we have gotten a Donald Trump in the White House. This guy's he's a convicted criminal for crying out loud. How do and you ask yourself, and the people around the world are asking, how would you let a convicted criminal become the head of what used to be the greatest nation on earth? How could you let that happen? Well, there are reasons for that. There are reasons for just about everything. I guess, I don't know. This whole thing with Charlie Kirk, man, it's really got me thinking, we, man, we have gone wrong. When you can eulogize and make an icon out of someone who basically, no matter how clean cut he looked, all right, no matter how well dressed he was, no matter how well he spoke, his whole thing was about hate. Every time I get on a plane and I see a black pilot, I get worried. What the hell do you call that? I wonder, did anybody ever inform this kid about the Tuskegee Airmen? you know? I mean, black women, have small brains. Anybody ever tell him about the black woman that helped America to win the space race? See, this is, and I dumped on the Democratic Party, NAACP, liberals in general. The media also shares a part of this blame because somehow the media forgot that we, the people, depend upon you and the media for accurate information. We depend upon you birds for the truth. And for the longest time, you have let us down. And what you did when you did that, right? You opened the door for the hate mongers to just walk right in. What did was it Hitler or was it this boy Goebbels? What's they say? You keep repeating lies long enough, and people start to believe it. And that, like I said, that's a large part of the blame for that is the media. And even now, why did media people, when Trump won this last election, why were you going down there to kiss his ring? Why was that necessary? And you know what this man is. Now we have this big Epstein thing coming up. And have you no idea what an embarrassment this is for the United States? We have a guy that if he was not sexually abusing underage girls, at the very least, he's running cover for those that did. Come on, the right wing always talks about patriotism. What the hell kind of patriotism is this? Where are we? Where the hell? How did we go so wrong? So no, just to sum it up, look, Charlie Kirk is dead. He was murdered. No one had the right to murder him. And he is meeting with his God. And like I said, he's learning that last and greatest lesson as we speak. But to turn him into an American icon, no, that's wrong. That's wrong to all the men and women of all colors and nationalities that have fought to try and make this a land for all people. to be able to live and prosper here. It is wrong. And I will say so, no matter what the cost. There are too many ghosts, too many voices from the past that will not allow me to do other than to speak the truth. So listen, that's enough for the night. And this is Bob Gums with the Concerned Forum. You see me, you see me on the internet. What is it? Check that little box if you appreciate what I have to say. And if you don't, at least hear me out. Listen, have a great evening. May the Creator bless you. May you take care of each other. And peace. Night.